Great folks, so hopefully you've done paper 1 now, and here's paper 3. Grade boundaries, exactly the same idea as before. And before you start marking, make sure you've answered all the questions. Really important to get into that habit, even on those ones where you feel like it might be a waste of time. You never know when you're going to make that breakthrough and where you're going to pick marks up. Just try doing some maths everywhere. Well, the first one here, this is simple enough because all we're going to have to do is put 0.7 into our calculators so that we get something like that. So just making sure you make it look exactly the same. So use the fraction button, use the brackets buttons, and then just type in what it says. 0.7 plus 1. And you could have put in 1.7 instead if you liked, but either way, 2 times 0.7. Yes, you could type in 1.4 as well. And that's the first thing, but then of course you need to hit S to D, and so it says all the figures in your calculator display. And that's a question you've really got to make sure you get right. Now remember, it's only 13 marks to get a grade 4. That's 2 of them straight away. Right, so there's so many ratio questions out there. 6,000 grams of potato cakes, 9 to 2 to 1. That's 10, that's 12 parts all together, isn't it? And you've got potato to cheese to onion. Again, I would take my time on this just because you want to make sure you don't make any mistakes. So you probably know to add all the parts together and divide by that, but even if you do, it's no harm in making a thing about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's my potato. Then we've got cheese being 2, cheese, and then we've just got 1 for onion. So each one of them needs to have the same amount, and we know that it's 6,000 grams we need for the whole thing. So we've got 10, 11, 12. So 6,000 divided by 12. Use your calculator, even though you know that 5 6s are 12, so it's going to be 500. Easy to make a mistake and be 10 times out. So then 500, we need 500 there and 500 there. So the amount of cheese and all those other bits, but the amount of cheese that we need is 1,000 grams, isn't it? So 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams of cheese. The cost is that much, so we've got 175 grams and we need to scale it up to 1,000. So 1,000 divided by 175 is, and it says that, so that's going to be a bit tricky. So if we just keep it as 40 over 7, that's how many of them that there are. So we need, which is 5.71 something, so we need that number times £2.25, because that's how many packets of cheese, or if we imagine that they were that, were going to be there. So we're just going to do 40 over 7 times 2.25, which gets us 12.857, and I'm writing down 3 decimal places because money is always rounded to the nearest penny, so it should be £12.86, and the mark scheme will accept either £12.85 or £12.86 for full marks, but you do need to have shown some working. Okay, standard form. Now you can always try, just in case, times 10 to the power 5 and see if that's done it for us. So we don't even have to remember what standard form means, but so 450,000, you can put a comma there if you want to, but you don't have to. And then 0.007 And if I put that into the calculator and press equals and then S to D, oh, it's done that one for me as well. I mean, I should know anyway that I would have to 1, 2, 3 movements of the decimal place, which is why we're having to divide 7 by 10 3 times, which is why you've got the negative power on there. Next one, 4.2 times 10 to the 3 plus 5.3 times 10 to the 2. Well, just do it in the calculator. 4.2, in fact, I would put it in brackets first of all, just to keep it. But it shouldn't matter actually, even if you haven't, because it'll do bid maths. And then we're adding, 5.3 times 10 squared, and that's giving us 4,730. Now if you've got 4,730, that's not in standard form. That'll get you 1 mark though. We've just got to put that into standard form. Now unfortunately the calculator doesn't change it at that point because it's such a small number, but the first digit goes in the units column, then we put all the other relevant digits, so that's 7 and 3, and then you're saying, right, how many times do I times it by 10 to get the 4 from the units to the thousands? And it's 3 times, so it's 4.73 times 10 to the power 3. So Zara's got to take 5 tests. Each test is out of 100. After 4 tests, her mean score is 64%. So that means her mean score is 64. What score must she get to increase her mean score in all 5 tests to 70%? Well, this is all about remembering that to get the mean, you divide the total number by how many you've done. So the total divided by 4 has got her 64. So if we do 64 times 4, we get how many marks she's scored so far, which is 256. Now she needs to get it up to the point at which all 5 would average at 70. So we're saying she scored 70 in all 5 tests. 70 times 5 is 350. So 350 take 256 is 94. So she needs 94 in order to get there. If you've written 94%, that's okay, it doesn't make any difference. Chow buys a boat for $160,000 and depreciates by 4% each year. Well, 100% take away 4% means that after a year it'll be down to 96%, and then that keeps on happening for 3 years. So all you need to do is multiply by 96%, which is 0.96, and do it 3 times. So we can smack that in the calculator, just all in one go, and that is your full working shown. So that gives us 141,557.76. Oh, and that is to 2 decimal places. So that, oh, but it says, oh, to the nearest Hong Kong dollar. So the final mark, we need to make sure that we round that. That 7 there is going to push that up to an 8. Now here we've got a reverse percentage problem. She's got a salary increase of 5%, and her salary after that is 252,000. Now what you can't do is take 5% of 252,000 away from it, because 5% of that number is going to be more than 5% of the smaller number. Not by a lot, but by enough. So 100% plus 5% is 105%. So what that means is the original amount, so the salary before the increase, has been multiplied by 1.05 to get to 252,000, and what we need to do is reverse that. So the inverse of multiplication is division, So we just divide by 1.05. And it's normally a nicer number that you get at the end of this. 252,000 divided by 1.05 is 240,000. When you're dealing with angles, there's always more than one way to go. With a regular polygon, you can go by making triangles in the middle, or you can go and seeing how many 180s it's going to be altogether, or you can go with my favourite, which is the exterior angle. So the exterior angle is the angle that is made if you continue any one of the lines on with this bit here. That's the exterior. And the reason for this is if I was to do this all the way round, so get like a water wheel kind of effect, all of those angles together would add up to 360. So what this means is 360 divided by 10 means that the exterior angle must be 36 degrees. Now, this isn't saying you must give reasons, you just have to show you're working clearly. So we don't have to say that. If it said give reasons, then we would. But that's what we need to show. Now, angles on a straight line sum to 180. Again, you don't need to write it because it only says show it clearly, but we do need to say for that 180 take 36, which is 144 degrees. Now, all of the angles are going to be 144 degrees inside, including this one. And the way I see this is these are going to be isosceles triangles. So if they're isosceles triangles, that's going to be the same size as that. This is also going to be 144. It's going to be the same size as that. So maybe we should call that y. So 180 take 144 is going to get us back to 36 degrees. That's got to be shared by the two y's. Divided by 2 equals y equals 18 degrees. So that's 18 degrees. And that's 18 degrees. And the whole of this bit is a 144, isn't it? Well, I know 2 18s are 36, so I'm going to do 144, because that's all of the interior angle, take away 36 is giving me 108 degrees. Now, you might have found a different way there, but as long as you've shown what you've done and you've got 108, you've got 4 marks. Here's one of those area questions that initially looks really nasty. You've just got to think that it's about 2 shapes. You've got the sector of a circle. Now, if that's a right angle, it's a quarter of a circle. So I'm going to work out the area of the whole circle, and then I'm going to take away the triangle. Now the triangle is going to be easy, because the triangle is just base times width, or by height, perpendicular, divided by 2, isn't it? So 8 times 8 over 2, which is 64 over 2, which is 32 centimetres squared. The circle, area of a circle, and it's there on, if you can't remember it, but you should know pi r squared, it's there on the formula sheet, so don't worry, always check it out if you're not sure. So we want quarter of a circle, so the area of the circle is going to be that divided by 4. So the radius of the circle is actually going to be 8 centimetres, isn't it? So it's going to be pi times 8 squared over 4. And when we've done that, we're going to take 32. So I could do it in the calculator all in one go like that. So I've got fraction, I go shift pi times 8 squared over 4, take 32, and that's giving me 18.265. Now what's it asking for? 3 significant figures, so we want 18.3 centimetres squared. Right, question 8 was removed. Move on to the next question. Okay. On Monday, 12 people took 5 hours to clean a number of cars. Tuesday, 15 people cleaned the same number of cars. Work out how many hours it took them. So assuming they will work at the same rate. Well, the easiest thing to do is work out one rate. So, how long one person would take. One person would take 12 times 5, wouldn't they? Which is 60 hours. So we've got 60 cleaning hours to do. And those hours are being done by 15 people. So if you divide 60 by 15, you get 4. The assumption is wrong. How might this affect the time taken for the 15 people to clean the cars? That all the people work at the same rate. Well, we've got no idea, have we? So it's just going to change it. We don't know if it's more or less. It's going to be one or the other. So you'd get a mark if you wrote it could take less time. You'd get a mark if you said it could take more time. Or just for saying it could be a different amount of time. So it's just a big reminder. Always write something down for these, and the blindingly obvious is often what it is, and sometimes people don't write something down because they think it can't just be that. Well, yeah, I'm afraid it can, especially if it's just one mark. Write something, folks. Okay, now this is a question about similar shapes actually, because the small triangle, DEB, has got exactly the same angles. That angle is going to be exactly the same as that one. That one the same, well, it is the same angle, and then you've got the two right angles, which means that the proportions of the triangle are exactly the same. So the first thing I'm going to do is just write down what these lengths are that I've got here, and write down which one we want. So we want that, so I'll call that X. We've got that one is 2 centimeters, and we've got that DB is 6 centimeters. So the fact that they are similar and that they're in proportion means that there's a number that you can multiply one length by and it will tell you another, and that'll be the same for that one to that one and all the others. So what we know is this length here, so you've got DB equals 6 centimeters, and AB is the critical one, is 9 plus 6 is 15 centimeters. So all I need to think about is how much, well, I need to know this length first as well, don't I? For which we are going to need to use Pythagoras. So Pythagoras, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c squared is the hypotenuse, means that if I call that little one there a squared plus that one squared is equal to that one squared. So what that means is a squared is equal to 6 squared is 36. Now I can take the 2 squared is 4, isn't it, from both sides. So a squared is going to be 32. So a will be the square root of 32 centimeters. This is why we're going to have to give our answer to 2 decimal places, but I'm not going to find out what root 32 is quite yet. I'm now going to think about DB is 6 centimeters and AB is 15 centimeters, and I'm thinking, how many 6's make 15? Well, it's 2.5. If you're not sure, just do 15 divided by 6 and always check just in case. Yeah, 5 over 2, 2.5. So that means that AB, my x, is going to be 2.5 times that. So CB is going to equal root 32 times 2.5. I've got 3 marks now. Now all I need to do is multiply it by what's there, and it says 10 root 2. Write that down, not that there's much point, is 14.142. So we want it to 2 decimal places, put a box around them, that's only a 2, so it's going to stay where it is at 14.14 centimetres. Right, error interval. So correct to 1 decimal place. You've got 6.4. The next 1 decimal place up would be 6.5. The one below would be 6.3. So if she's rounded it correctly, it must lie somewhere between 6.35 and 6.45. 6.45 would round up to 6.5, wouldn't it? But anything below, including 6.49 recurring, which strictly speaking is the same thing, would round down. So that's why, if you look at the inequality signs here, this one hasn't got an or equals sign on. So 6.45 there, that would round up, so it's got the or equals sign on it there, and that's all it is. Question 12. Working out the value of A and the value of N. Right, well, first things first is when you've got powers with a bracket, you multiply the powers. So I can work out what the N must be, because 6 times a half equals 3, doesn't it? So therefore N must equal 2. So then we also need to think about, what does a power a half mean? A power a half means, so we've got a to the power a half means the square root of a. Now if the square root of a is giving us 7, then that number there must be the a must be 7 squared, mustn't it? Which is 49. So a is 49 and n is, the value of n. The value of n is 2, because you'd put a 2 in there. It's a sneaky way to try and do you out of a mark, that is. The mark scheme does say that if you had, instead of writing 49 and 2, written clearly 49x to the power 6 to the power 1 over 2, you would get the full marks for that. Now I remember a while ago when this question came out in a real paper, and it was an absolute stinker. Loads of people got really confused, but people worked it out as well in a load of different ways. And when I just saw it just now, I thought, oh my word, what's going on here? I can't remember what to do. And then I thought, well, let's just treat it as a little bit of algebra. So I was going to call this x and that y, but then because the shape changes around, I thought, no, let's just call them two totally unrelated letters with what's going on. So the length of the rectangle is p, the width of it is q. And now I'm just going to think about what's happening in what I know. From A to B, it's going 8, isn't it, on the x direction, and then from A up to B, it's going up 16. Now if I consider all of these, in order to get across to there, it's not as far as 2p's, is it? But if I went 2p's, I would then have to take off one width, which is q. So stay with me, I'm going to say that that is 2p, but take away q, and that is taking me 8. I'm now going to make another equation for what's going up. So if I go up, I've got, well, that's a p there, that's a p there, and that's a q there. So to get from A up to B is 2p plus q, and that is a vertical distance of 16. Now I'm just going to look at the two, because 2p's are already the same, all I have to do is say, what's the difference between this equation and that one? And I put my arrow going down there, because from negative 1q up to 1q is actually a distance of 2q. And from 8 up to 16 is 8. So I'm getting that the width of the double the width of the rectangle must be 8. Therefore, divide by 2, that width is 4. And if that width is 4, then the y coordinate must be 4 plus 4 is 8. Now, what is Q? Well, I just need to substitute back into one of these. What do I mean by that? I mean, I know that Q is equal to 4. So I could say that 2p take 4 is equal to 8. If that's true, I can add 4 to both sides to tell me that 2p is equal to 12, and then I can divide both sides by 2, telling me that p is equal to 6. So p is 6, and it is one length of the rectangle from there to there. That's from 3 plus 6, making 9. Now, however you did it, as long as you showed what you did, and if you've got 9/8, you've got 5 marks.